So today I wanted to talk through some of my favorite photos that I've ever taken. This video is one that we've been meaning to film for a while, but just haven't ever got round to, purely because I find this really difficult. Picking examples of my work that I really like is incredibly hard. I'm so self-critical, and anytime I've tried to sift through for the images I wanted to talk about, I've always been incredibly indecisive, not really settled on which ones to pick, but I think I finally got it, so let's get to it. First up, we have this image from Japan when I went in 2014. My dad took me, and it was an incredible trip. Got so many cool photos on that trip just because everything there is very photogenic and just looks so different from everything back home. And that's one of my main reasons behind picking this one. I really like this because it looks, to me at least, very Japanese, very Tokyo. You look in it and, I mean, apart from this guy with his blue shirt at the back, it's just Japanese people, and there is pretty much no English writing apart from this small text for Tsukiji at the top, because this is taken outside the Tsukiji fish market, which is an incredible place to visit, by the way. It's so cool seeing all the sights. There's lots of bikes in the background, and I just really like it. I mean, this guy has a very serious expression on his face with his scooter, and he just kind of stopped, and I got the photo really quickly. So I was very pleased when I got home to find out that I had actually got the focus right on this. It's very hard when you're out and about and you don't have a lot of time to get exactly where your focal point needs to be. Other than some small technical issues with the fringing on her white helmet, I think I just really like this photo. And one of the things I really like about it that I didn't when I first took it were these browns at the back. Initially, these just looked really bad. Once I'd sort of done some post-processing and brought the rest of the image up to where it needed to be, I really like the way that there's kind of like this muted, retro-looking vibe to the whole thing, and I'm just really pleased with how it came out. I think that this shadow at the bottom right's a bit distracting, but otherwise, I really like this picture. And thank you to that guy for letting me take his photo, because he did stop and sort of pose briefly for it, which made it slightly easier, and it did make me feel slightly less awkward about being that guy with the camera. But no, I'm very
happy
with this photo. It was a really cool time, and it was a really cool trip, and it was just a really awesome place to visit. Next up, we have this photo that I took just down from our house actually, by the Southampton water looking over the Solent. It was really late at night in like a mid-June, you know, when it gets really humid. And I'd said before in the evening, I was like, I bet there is going to be a storm. 100% got to be a storm later. And there was, which was fantastic because it meant that I had my camera prepped and ready to go just in case. It was about 2 a.m. I had work the next day, but the lightning really started to kick off. There was so much of it in such a short space of time, and we don't really get storms. So I was like, okay, this is the time to go practice getting some photos of some lightning. So I went down to the water. It wasn't raining just where we were, which was perfect, but there was all this lightning going on in the background, and it was positioned pretty perfectly as well, because if you look, there are some cranes out over by this area of the container port, and it just made it really nice that all the lightning was occurring just to the left of those. It meant I could frame things up nicely. I've got like a lot going on in the middle section of the image. And I really like that the water was still enough at the bottom to give really good reflections as well. So you get all these lights bleeding down, and they kind of look a little bit melty, a little bit drippy. And I just really like the way that the lights do that. It gives it something interesting to look at in the water. And then you got that thin band of sky at the top to kind of break things up. I'm really happy with this photo. I wasn't when I took it, but after playing around with the post-processing again and playing around with the crop, that was the big deal for me. It's like getting that crop perfect on this made this image go from something where I was like, I don't really get it, to this is a really nice photo and I really like this. This is still one that I'm really happy with. Even though there are some technical issues and there are some things I usually don't really like these aperture starbursts here that are caused by using quite narrow aperture blades. They make everything get all spiky and jagged. I usually don't like that. I find that very distracting, but I don't mind it on this photo. So again, I just really like this one. This is probably one of the first images that I got some creative validation for, shall we say. I entered it into a photography contest on a forum, and it got through the first round and was selected to be in the top 100. It didn't go any further than that because there were some way better photos from much better photographers in that sort of category, but one of the things that did come out of that was some people made a video and they went through the entire top 100 and they gave their criticisms and critiques of every single photo that was in there, and I really liked what they said about my photo. They didn't mean it as a compliment. They it was probably one of the shortest critiques in the entire video, but they opened up the image, they said, I don't like this, it looks like the opening to a bad Steven Seagal movie. And that's really actually stuck with me because I really am happy with that. I'm so happy with that. I think that that's a great aesthetic to go for, like that 80s action movie opening where things are incredibly cliche, there's lightning over some docks, and you just know that Steven Seagal is going to come around on a boat and there's going to be some terrorism going on in the water, and it's going to be like over the top and really stylized. And I was really happy that I've brought that aesthetic to someone's mind because I think that that's really, really cool. And after hearing that, I definitely liked this photo a lot more. All right, now this photo is one of my first images to have made me any money, interestingly enough. And this was one of the pictures that really got me thinking about food photography as more than just something you do to show off what you ate, but also something that you do to make people think about food and all of the other sort of uses that photos have, so like websites and menus and things like that. This is the photo that really kicked all that off for me. They're just some pretty standard Tesco wings on a barbecue. We were up at Sarah's family's for a weekend and they let us use their barbecue, so we cooked a bunch of meat and I just grabbed some photos. There were a couple more, but none that I liked as much as this one, purely because of the bright, vivid orangeness of the wings. I thought that was really, really awesome. And then just the contrast of that with the whole pile of wings at the back and then these kind of black barbecue rungs of the grate at the bottom. And I'm just really, really happy with it. It was quite difficult to get close to because of the heat of the barbecue, so I had to be pretty quick getting it. And I managed to get the focus correct, which is always a bit of a struggle of mine. But I also just really like the way that the light is coming down from natural lighting outside, and it makes the glaze look really, really shiny and just really delicious. Like, I really like these wings, and every time I see this photo, I just want to eat them. And that's why I'm really, really proud of this image, I think, just because they really conjure up that outdoor barbecue, peri-peri, spicy wings flavor for me, and I just really, really enjoy that. So I'm very happy with this photo, and this is probably my widest circulated image. There are quite a few places using this now as an image for their food websites or restaurants and things like that, and so it always makes me incredibly happy whenever I see it being used. There's some more to talk about for this image that I'll probably make another video on at some point once it all gets resolved. But until then, yeah, this is just definitely one of my favorite food pictures I've ever taken, and it was before I really started taking things seriously. I was still yet to come up with many more that I like as much as this one, and one I'm going to talk about in a second. Next up, we have the Arcadia Spider Stage from Glastonbury in 2016, and wow, just what a stage. It's a giant mechanical robot stage that has crane arms, flamethrowers, lasers, pyrotechnics, and all sorts, and they put it on these really cool post-apocalyptic type theme art installations almost, really. They're kind of like late night showings, and nothing can really compare to walking up a hill and seeing this at the top of it, and just, it kind of takes you by surprise a little bit, even though you can see it from fairly far away. You just, I don't know, it's just very, very surreal to see. And so I just knew I had to get a photo of it. And I am so glad that this one came out the way that it did. In particular, I really like the way that the laser beam from the bottom underneath the guy is pointing up. You've got these three strong bursts on the left and then this big one on the right, as well as some crisscross patterns as well. These are all constantly moving, so to get these in a reasonable configuration was pretty much just trial and error. It was stand there for a while and just keep shooting photos until you get something that you like. One of the things I also really like about this photo is that you can see the guy in the center underneath the giant eyes, but you don't really notice him straight away, or at least I don't. For me, the big focus are just these big giant eye rings that they've got above it, and it just makes it look really, really creepy. And I really like that the color configuration of the spider at that precise moment, because that also cycles similar to the lasers, you've got to catch it at the right point, is blue, because it's a nice contrast. I mean, blue and orange is that classic color combination between not only the lanterns, but also this, I believe it's a lighting, like a big paper lantern thing that one of the other festival visitors is carrying with them over there. Normally that wouldn't be there, that's not part of the actual installation, but I really like the way it fits into this corner and gives this corner something to hold, basically. And I just really like this photo all in all. When I went back the next year, I wanted to get, well, basically a better version of this. I'm much more familiar with my camera as time goes by, so I really wanted like a 2017 updated version that I was hoping to be better. but it really just didn't happen. There are some that I'm happy with from this year, but not to the level that I'm happy with this one. And that just really hammered home for me how this was almost the perfect moment, just because everything lined up. The color of the creature, the position of the lights, the position of the lasers, just everything worked out. And that was really, really hard to try and replicate. Even standing there for about 20-30 minutes, just pretty much holding the shutter button down and just getting everything that I could, it still didn't quite line up to the degree that these lined up. And so yeah, I'm really happy with how this turned out. And again, this is just one of those ones that I'm more happy with after going back and trying to get a better version and realizing actually this one was actually just kind of lucky. I got very lucky with this photo. Okay, so this is a photo that I'm really pleased with, more for the background and for my, let's say, setup of the photo, I think, than anything else. This was a bit of practice done just to get better at presenting a scene, if you like, because it's not just about the food, it's about everything that goes around it that really builds up the image and makes it look good. I've been watching some sort of tutorial and instruction videos online by some famous food photographers, and one of the things that they were talking about was that you do just have to consider everything. You can't just consider the food. It's great to plate the food nicely, but if you just plate the food nicely and dump it down, it's not going to look great. You have to really consider the entire scene. So this is probably one where I went the most all out in terms of accoutrements to go along with it, and I'm really happy with the result. We've got these dough balls in the back that you can barely see. They're hardly in focus, and they're sat on this nice wooden board. Without them, this whole top edge of the image would feel incredibly empty. Similarly, over here on the right, that's an entire fresh block of Parmesan cheese. I bought this solely for this photo. I mean, yeah, I used it afterwards, but the driving force was, okay, I want something to go in the background. What can I have blurred in the background of this photo to just build it up and make it more like a cookbook style image or something that you'd see published? And so I've added these things like the cheese in the background, the sprig of green just to break it up. We've got a nice place setting with brand new cutlery that's only ever used for food photography. No one's actually ever eaten with it. A nice clean white bowl, and I'm pretty sure that the food was awesome if I remember correctly. If I do say so myself, it was delicious, and I just think it looks really good here, and it just looks clean and bright. And this was trying out some new flash techniques as well. It was using a lower powered flash and then boosting the exposure more afterwards, instead of using my usual technique of just blasting it with a high power flash, which usually gives me uneven highlights and odd bits of the image that are just too bright. So this was trying out some new techniques, and I was really, really happy with how they all turned out. And that's, again, just a really nice feeling when you go, I'm trying something new and it's turned out exactly like I was picturing. This is the image that I had in my head before setting this whole thing up, and it came out exactly like I was planning. Usually what happens is I'll just get all the stuff together and just sort of shoot and try things out as I go along and see how it works. But this is one of the first times that I was really trying to create something in particular with a particular feel, a particular look, and everything turned out just as planned. So very, very happy with this image. This is, again, another street photography style image. I don't do a lot of street photography. I find it kind of odd, but we were in London with Sophie and some of our other friends. Vanessa was there as well. And we were down in Chinatown, and it was getting late in the evening, and I just had this sort of flash of, I've seen all these kind of images online. I really want to have a go at making this kind of photo, and this was a perfect opportunity. And so I just sort of grabbed the camera, took a quick snap, and then immediately hated it when I got home. Just didn't like it at all. So it sat in my reject, maybe look at later pile for quite a long time. And eventually I got the post-processing where I wanted it to be. The kind of reflection of the street that you can see in this mid part was initially quite distracting, so I managed to minimize that. And you can see that she's looking quite intently at what I believe are steamed buns and pastries on the counter in front of you. But I just really like that there's a lot of details in this. There's a woman drinking coffee behind her. There's a nice big open sign that breaks everything up and is a really nice contrast because you've got these cool blue tones of the building opposite, but you've then got these red lanterns coming across with the bright red neon of the open sign. And I just think that it really came together far better than I was expecting, and how far better than I initially thought when I looked at it for the first time. This is another one of those images that has given me some creative validation as well. I tagged the photo when I posted it on Instagram after I was finally happy with it with one of those daily feature type tags. It was London only, and they chose it as the winner for that day, so they featured it in their gallery, which was really, really cool. And one of the things that they said about it was that it captured the everyday in London beautifully. Ultimately, it is the lady that makes or breaks this photo, and it's the former. She was positioned in the photo perfectly, her facial expression captured at precisely the right moment. Who or what was she looking at? What was she thinking of? The cool tones complement the subject and the mood of the photo. What I liked most about Ash's photo was it invited us to stop and look at things we usually take for granted whilst we are caught up in the hustle and bustle of London. And usually I'd be kind of like, yeah, everyone just says all these stuff about photos and stuff, but that is really genuinely what I was trying to do with the photo, and I just wanted to capture this particular moment, and it worked out really, really well, and I'm glad that other people like that too. It was a very different kind of style from what I usually do, and I'm just glad that it worked out. It's similar to the previous photo, just one that I had an image and like what I wanted out of this photo in my head, and it was this. Like it turned out exactly as planned, and I'm very, very happy with that. So there we go, that's all the photos that I wanted to talk about. There are many other photos that I'm happy with, but I wanted to talk about all of these because I had something in particular that I wanted to say about them, and I hope that you thought that was interesting. It's really cool seeing like my journey from very early photos to where I am now, and it's really awesome that these are starting to get attention from other people. I do this because I enjoy it, but it is always incredibly nice when people see the things that you've done and like them for the same reasons. So it is really awesome to see that. So thank you for watching. Hope you found that very interesting, and we will see you next time. Bye.